Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely prostitution. Absolutely.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, sex for money, sex for bartered goods. Yeah, definitely.
I would think that would have been second, like a chicken for a barrel of rice or something. I don't know. And then prostitution.
Nah, you can always grab a snack afterwards. You work up an appetite first.
Oh man,
That's why
that's
you before you pay her, you ask her to go make you a sandwich, or him. We're equal opportunity here.
we are a bunch of strange gentlemen
Who, us?
living in living in a very very strange world. The world is like, I think the world is like either catching up to our strangeness, or has far surpassed it. It depends on how you look at it.
I am seriously concerned if the world is approaching our level of strangeness. It's not validating. If everyone's as weird as you and me,
Then we've been wrong for a long time.
I don't know if that makes us trendsetters, visionaries. I feel like if that's the case, we need to start a cult, Adam. We need to get in on that grift.
What this is about.
Is this not our beachhead into the cult world?
Isn't this how all those cults started? Isn't that like how they do that? Isn't that? I mean, before they had grifts, didn't you just have to like get a TV show or something like that?
No,
You had to just get out there.
You find like a group of like-minded people, right? Which is what we're trying to do here. And what you do is you typically apply some level of like religious fervor, right? And lean on some angle about the end of days or the apocalypse or like the need for cleanliness and to be away from the modern world. And a modern world is whatever it is at the time, right? Whatever particular thing people are stressed about, social media, right? Or, prevalence of cell phones in everyone's hand and all that. So you start with that, you apply some sort of like biblical justification for it, and you isolate those people, right? You find a compound out in the forest, you find an island. Then once you've got them on board, right, you've got them, hey, well, we need to build shelter, we need to farm. So now you suddenly have built-in labor who's there ideologically. Then once you've got them, and this is the key one, Adam, this goes back to the world's oldest profession right here. That's when you start to talk about how the other men are unclean and the women should only be with you, right? And that you can bring them closer to God or whatever. And
Hold on, I need to get my pad and pen to start writing this stuff down. This sounds like gold right now. It sounds like step one.
Yeah,
step two.
That's when you aren't feeling the hand of God. Like, let me help you. Let me help you to achieve. And
let me help you achieve that with the penis of God.
Yeah, exactly. the physical manifestation of the Creator. I'll help you out there.
Yeah, I was named Adam for a reason. Here is what I'm going to present you: is my penis.
Could not be
instead of a rib, it will be a penis.
Hey, you know what? A rib could have meant something different back in the day. It could have been ribbed, right? For your pleasure. There it is. Doesn't help that my nickname is apparently Dick. So this works for both of us, honestly.
That's fucking weird. There's so much correlation and so much common ground. Well, there's got to be something in between a cult and like some crazy political party. There's got to be like a nice little niche somewhere in the middle.
Between cultism and political organization?
Yeah.
Maybe think tanks?
But that's not like a mass thing. I'm talking about like a mass thing where it's just like, be normal. Just be normal.
Well, it's right there, my friend. MAGA.
Just be normal. I repeat, just be normal.
Stop being a dick. Hold on, I got to do one thing. Be right back.
Sure. I will just entertain myself like I do most days. Sitting and watching, hoping for better times.
Speaking of cults, should we talk about protest movements?
Or
What was that?
I said, go for it. Protest the hell out of them.
We are here to protest the existence of everything.
Or protest the need to have a protest
Protest the
for
need.
what's going on in this world.
A counter protest, but it's not a counter protest, right? It's just protesting the existence of protests and the need for them. Well, I think we can kind of get into that in this conversation here, actually. So it's going to be interesting. So let's kick it off. We're about 6 minutes into recording. You feeling warmed up? You feeling good?
I feel like what is it? Vibe coding?
Yes.
We're vibe podcast. We're vibe podding.
Yes, we are vibe podding our way through this one. And I think more than ever, because I don't know about you, I just have like a series of notes on this. I don't have a narrative. I was originally thinking, that I would have a story, like a consistent story through this, but I didn't like it. I didn't want to do the historical paralogs. I felt like it took away from what we're doing now and what's happening. So we're vibe podding our way through this one. How do you feel about that?
Anything's worth a shot.
This could be our worst.
Like what else? It could be. But what else is there to talk about other than, the current state of why you would need a protest for someone who's technically not a king?
You know what? Hold that thought. Let me do a little intro here and let's get started and then jump in with that. How's that sound? All right. Welcome again to Idiot Seeking Village, where we struggle to understand and make sense of this idiotically stupid world we live in. I'm Rich, as always. And Adam, I can neither confirm nor deny that you were recently spotted at the Louvre. Should we be recording, worried that this recording is going to be interrupted by Inspector Clouseau raiding your basement?
I would love for that to happen. I am he's obviously no longer with us, but I am a huge Peter Sellers fan.
Well, I think you've got, what's his face? Steve Martin did the Pink Panther movies not that long ago.
I haven't even seen any of those. I am a Peter Sellers. I have seen all the Pink Panther movies, all his like little related ones that are not under the Pink Panther brand, probably 100 times. Me and my grandfather would watch that religiously, like at least every year, whenever it was on TV.
So I think the answer to the question is, who would fangirl out more if Steve Martin broke into your basement to arrest you right now? It seems like it would be me and not you.
Yeah, I'd be like, where's the real one?
Oh, wow. Brutal take.
Fraud, sir. You are a fraud.
Oh, man. We might have to have a fight over Steve Martin here and Peter Sellers.
I'm not saying he's not. He has great movies that I enjoy and it's comedy and things like that, but I didn't even bother because I'm like, I can't change. I don't like when they change classics or like try to like do something with them. So I usually just don't bother. I'm not going to say it's not a good movie. It might have been, but I'll rather watch the original if I'm going to watch anything.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
look how inappropriate those movies were. I mean,
it's true.
They were incredibly inappropriate, at least for today's standards. I mean, My Little Yellow Friend. I mean, I don't think they would ever utilize that in today's vernacular in a movie.
No, the 60s and 70s had just a real nice base level of casual racism towards everyone at that time. It's something that we definitely miss in this culture. I remember not long ago, Grandma was saying, we were talking about what should we have for dinner, and she goes, let's order from the Chinaman. And like, we know what you're saying. Glad that no one else is here, but it
just said Chinese. You didn't have to say Chinaman. Could have just said Chinese. Chinese.
She's also the one who would insist that, like, oh yeah, we didn't see all these differences back then. Like, are you fucking kidding me? We just watched Peter Sellers talk about his little yellow friend. So no.
We just called them coloreds. I mean, it just was the rainbow, coloreds.
That was the original rainbow capitalism, was just soliciting dinner from different ethnic groups. So, I mean, speaking of originals, we know who actually did the Louvre heist. It was the Muppets, right? Kermit, Gonzo, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, right? They haven't had any commercial success in over a decade. And they've got to be between inflation and just spending. They've got to have eaten into their retirement savings at this point. And I got to be honest with you, Miss Piggy, she's not for the streets. So they definitely are the ones who pulled this off.
I just think it's funny that a lot of the companies from that from Europe like got in on like memes and made kind of jokes of the whole thing. Like our equipment was used, or if you build something, it will last, or it might not hold, but it'll look nice when you steal it. It's just crazy. Like I'm like, damn, good job.
Adam, you and I are both old, so we got to define this. Do you know what a thirst trap is?
I learned about that like maybe a year or two ago.
Okay, yeah, same. So do yourself a favor after this episode, or just do it right now while I'm talking. Um, Look up Dunkin' Donuts anywhere on social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, wherever you look at. They've got some social media intern who is just going all out on like, I want MILFs, like where they at. And it's all Halloween related to like their spider donuts and all this. It is absurd.
Like
Definitely go check
mummies,
that out.
are they referring to it, or
No, they're just being straight up like where the hot mom's at. Like come here into my literal thirst trap and it's a cage. Like they're gonna capture
yeah,
them like
see
a
that
raccoon.
Duncan captures Spidey in Thirst Trap, removes his login credentials. Oh, because they're doing like a little spider. That's a kind of cool donut though. It's like a chocolate spider on like a purple iced donut. That's kind of cool though.
I've had
I like that.
I've had them before. I think they do them every year. But yeah, whoever the social media guy is or gal who's been running it has just been really leaning heavily into the sexualized nature of it, and it's been fantastic.
Go get that donut.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
so I think we could talk sexy Muppets, donuts, and the Louvre all day, but I think we want to focus on something else that's at the same time
Something important, I guess,
it's
even though donuts are important.
well, it's also very French, and at the moment, at least, it has a lot of holes in it as well. And it's something that's always been lacking here in the U.S., right? And that's protest. It's mass protests. It's standing up and going to the government, "What the fuck?" And I think specifically, you and I were having dinner the other night. That was the night of the second No Kings protest a couple weeks ago. In the back of my mind, I was kind of chewing over a question that I saw over and over again online all that afternoon, which was, what is this accomplishing? Right? What is the point of this? What is it? Is it actually doing anything? And I think it's worth us digging in on that a little bit, don't you?
Okay, yeah. Get a little chew on that bone for a little bit. Gnaw on
Well,
that.
speaking of sexualizing donuts, yes, there we go. So what
Yeah, I
were
could
you?
definitely to see that, like, because I was thinking about it before, getting on with you today, and well, it kind of felt familiar to like that whole Occupy Wall Street thing, which they went above and beyond to say we kind of really don't have a purpose. We're just like here. But I felt like this was like more of we are here. We're not going away, even though when we're done, we just wanted you to know that we're here and we're not happy. That's the way how I'm maybe trying to take it more positively for that No Kings protest is like, hey, God, hey, don't think we're not here. And as a reminder, because I have a feeling next year when we're back here, it's going to be protesting you fucking with the elections.
Yeah, no, I think to answer that specific question, right, of like what was this accomplishing? It's definitely visibility, and that there is, people are not happy with the administration. They're not happy with Trump's actions. Whether it's ICE raids, it's Doge, it's the tariffs, it's any of the shit that's gone on these first 9 months so far of this administration. And to me, at least, that's encouraging to see. you want to know that you're not out here alone on an island. I feel, at least personally, especially over the last decade, right, since Donald Trump really burst onto the scene politically, the sea of MAGA flags and MAGA hats and bumper stickers and all this shit has just felt overwhelming and isolating. And in a lot of ways, right, what mass protest does, or just protest does, it raises awareness of an issue and visibility and shows you that other people are thinking the same thing.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, it is nice to see that. Oh wow, there's a shit ton of people who don't agree with this stuff. I mean, even the polls to me still are shockingly how many people agree with him still, and that's still disconcerting. But it's like, hey, here's a million motherfuckers out there saying, watching you. You go too far, we'll be back in probably bigger numbers.
Yeah,
I don't know if he gives a shit, but
I don't think he gives a shit particularly, but it's a good reminder that people are not on board with this. It's nice that people gave up 2 hours of their weekend to tell him he's an asshole and to drop little signs and to show up in public to do so. But this isn't the kind of thing that leads to regime change, at least not the way that it is so far. Right. And,
right.
Is it that we're going to continue to channel this energy into the midterms next year? Because are we even going to have midterms? Right. Is there some state of emergency he's going to try to claim that says, no, we're no votes, right? Voting is canceled. We're at war, blah, blah, whatever justification to hold on to power the way Netanyahu has done, the way that Putin has done, right? The way that so many, frankly, what's his face, Zelensky in Ukraine, right, has held on to power as well by saying we're in an emergency situation, we're suspending voting.
Yeah, I think he won't go that far this time around, but I would say he's going to do some shenanigan bullshit with the elections. I mean, we've never had an election problem until he came around. That's number one. Number two, he's the only one who's ever complained about it. And number three is technically, if Biden did do what he says he did for the election, Biden decides like, you know what? We're gonna do a coup. I'm not even in power right now, but we're gonna do a coup, overthrow President Trump. I'm gonna take office for a few years, and then I'm just gonna give up. That's basically what he's saying. That's what Donald Trump, his whole thing is.
Wait, sorry, what's his Biden thing again?
Meaning that Trump was president when he lost his election.
Yes.
But the election was stolen.
Right.
Technically, a coup occurred. Not the January 6th rioters weren't the coup. Everybody else was.
Mm-hmm.
And then Biden was put in place only to say and peacefully walk out 4 years later and have a fair election. Or because he won, it was somewhat fair. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't make any sense to anybody. And he still keeps talking about it.
Exactly. He's always said every election is rigged unless he wins, right? And he's been pretty consistent about that since the 2016 election, that none of it's legitimate unless it's me.
Yeah, so I would assume this would be very like Putin-esque, where the Republicans win, or if it's close or whatever, he'll make sure that they win, and that's it. Like, these are the votes. We're stopping the counting. They won. Or I got 80% of the votes, even though that should have been impossible, that kind of thing. That's probably what will happen. They'll just keep an election but fraudulently screw it up, because he's already set the stage that it's fraudulent. And now I'm going to make sure it's not fraudulent by me winning. So that shows you that it's legit, which if you have half a brain, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's been the chatter this week, right? Is he said, oh, I'll run as vice president. Like, no, you're not allowed to, right? The Constitution is pretty clear on that. If you're not eligible to be president, you're not eligible to run for vice president, which is what Putin did, right? He had Medvedev run as president when his terms were up, and then he amended the Constitution so that he could run more afterwards. So he was a puppet president at that time.
It's amazing, like, how I don't even see he's a narcissist. He's just because I don't know if they're narcissists who are actually confident, so I can't really say for sure. But how insecure must you be that you would be okay with destroying a country that's been around for 200 years to save your own ego? I mean, man, are you unstable?
I mean, remember, a not insignificant portion of why he ran in 2024 was to get away from all the criminal investigations and the court trials, right? To get his get out of jail free card by being ascended to the presidency.
I gotta
And
believe people would have said, okay, don't run again and we will make these disappear.
I mean,
That could easily transpired.
that easily could have happened. That absolutely could have happened, right? It's the same way when you look back at his impeachment trials that he had during his first term, and they went after the whole quid pro quo thing with with Zelensky in Ukraine at that point, and the whole conversation around that was, look, they went after this. They tried to impeach him on this narrow, particular slice of, like a technicality, ultimately. But the reason that they didn't go for a broader impeachment inquiry was because if they opened it up, then they would have opened up, the Democrats would have opened up themselves and other presidents to the same criticism and analysis, right? They would have basically, what we don't do is we don't go after our presidents, our former presidents, our former politicians criminally after they leave office, right? And we don't impeach them for things that all the presidents do, because then when do you stop impeaching people for illegal shit, right? You can't set the precedent around that. And so that's why they didn't go after it. So the thing to your point around, well, they could have dropped the charges, is he was mishandling classified information, right? He was doing all these things that Hillary did, that Biden did, right? That everyone, that Pence did. And if they drop that, they set the precedent that we don't prosecute these things and it's okay. And how do you do that from a framework of a legal perspective? How do you do that and then have any sort of credibility?
If they've been doing it and they're continuing to do it, well, they lost the credibility anyway.
I don't disagree with that.
By default, they ended up losing the credibility, except for Bolton. He's going to hang for this.
No, he might legitimately hang.
God, it's just amazing how we just get roped into this nonsense spiral. Like, okay, so we're protesting no kings, and now you have the other guys who are like, well, it's a hate America protest. I'm like, are fucking serious? What about this is hate America?
If
anything, it's hate you, but it's not hate America.
Well, to me, that's a fundamental problem, right? Digging in on no kings and all this is, again, it's a feel good get together, tell Donald Trump he's an asshole, but it doesn't actually have a message about what to do and what to try to accomplish, right? It's just saying, I don't like what you're doing, which is what a lot of Democrat, mainline messaging has been for the past decade. Is, I'm opposed to Donald Trump, but I don't actually have any sort of meaningful solutions to the problems that he's addressing. I disagree with how he's doing it, but I'm not going to give you an alternative at the same way, right? And so I'm looking at No Kings, right? No Kings had something like, I'm just looking at the numbers here, was probably the largest protest since the women's liberation protests back in 2017. You remember the pink hats that happened right after his first election, and it's grown. The October one was larger than the June one, and there have been a number of protests going on in this country. Actually, some numbers. There's a couple of groups who are tracking the numbers. The number of protests have tripled in the first 9 months of this second term of Trump's than they did during his first term. There's some
I can
15,000
imagine.
individual protest sites compared to around 5,000 during his first term.
Well, like how much, like also like those numbers, how much of it's skewed because of COVID and nobody's allowed to go out of their house for a year.
No, that includes pre-COVID. That includes pre-COVID. So definitely there were the George Floyd protests at that
At this
in
rate, like
2020.
okay,
But yeah, for the kind of the same amount of time when you compare them apples to
gotcha.
apples, it's tripled compared to where it was at this particular point. But yeah, it definitely absolutely increased right into 2020, which got a lot more, the George Floyd protests and all that sort of stuff. And I
He
think,
wasn't as so bad until now. I mean, he was bad before, but now he's just like, oh, you haven't seen nothing yet, people.
well, that's what it is, right? Trump has definitely escalated the rhetoric and the behavior, right? It's so quaint looking back at his first term because it was so incompetent. His administration
Yeah.
just did not know what they were doing. They couldn't pass legislation. And, guys like Scaramucci coming in for a day and a half and then dropping out. And that was just this revolving door of people in the administration, and it was laughably incompetent, which bit us all in the ass when COVID hit, right? Because we didn't have a good unified response to address any of this. Now it's the revenge tour, right? It's going after his perceived enemies and
Yeah.
trying to weaponize the state against them. And I think a big chunk of that increase in the number of protesters right now is, and I had this feeling at that time was, okay, this guy sucks, but it's a clown show. And electoral politics will fix this. We'll get to the next election. And we did. The midterms came around and he lost his majority in Congress, right? He no longer had both houses of Congress afterwards, right? So like, hey, Trump 1 came in. This was a blip. It was a mistake. And we can fix this within the system. But I think there's a realization right now with this second term, is that his success, it's a product of the political system. And it's not a mistake. This is what's going on. Our elections are being bought, they're being funded right through Citizens United, all these PACs and whatnot. You've got more and more well-connected, wealthy billionaires backing the processes they want to see. We saw this very clearly with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all these guys who've been involved very visibly around this time, this co-option of, you've got Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg at the inauguration this time around. And you've got the hot mic moments where Zuckerberg is turning to Trump at a dinner and going, yeah, so what's that number you wanted me to tell you again of like how much money we made because of you, right? It's rigged. And now we're starting to see that more clearly than ever. The evidence is there that we don't have an equal society. We don't have equal access, and kind of the parliamentary liberal democracy that we've had is not working for everyone. And so I think these protests are more of a reflection right now that an election alone is not going to solve the problem this time around, right? It's starting to shift into a focus on systemic change, that we need to fix the system, that we need to, and we talked about this when we talked about redistricting and representation back in our first episode, right? This isn't working for the majority of Americans, and inequality, wealth inequality, the inaccessibility to power is growing ultimately.
Yeah.
At the
It
moment.
doesn't seem like any of them want to change it.
And correct. And the people in power are taking advantage of that. So they're not trying to address it, largely speaking. They're trying to use it to their benefit and to the benefit of the people backing them.
The few people who do want to change it are so far the other way. It's just move closer to the center. Just move a little closer. It's like, I just want to nudge them. Your ideas are not going to work. Just go a little bit closer, and then things might pan out. But January 6th truly changed everything, because you had a president basically say everything is fake and do something about it. And that's changed it all, because he got reelected. I mean, the guy was cool with what happened. You just can't have a guy like that come back. You
That
can't. This is like a bad movie.
that speaks to the frustration of the electorate, right? Of the citizens of this country, where they don't care if rules are being broken. They see the rules as being part of the problem. And so true Trumpers, right? So, hardcore MAGA don't care that he tried to overthrow the government. They'd care if someone else tried to overthrow the government and put in someone that's not Trump, but they don't care that Trump did it because they see it as a necessary evil, right? It's the dirty cop who has to go against the system to get justice, right? It's a trope in our society at this point. Because
But
go
you're
ahead.
going to get fucked in the process.
They don't, well, that's the thing, right? They don't see that beyond the immediate, because ultimately, as soon as he's out of power, then the next guy, you've already broke. This is what we've seen, right? This is so much of what I've learned. And I think so many people have learned recently. I always thought of like the Constitution and the government as just this intractable bureaucracy, right? There were rules around everything and what you could and could not do. And what we're learning is it was more of a series of guidelines and suggestions, right? It's norms and expectations. And all you need is one guy to come in and burst through those norms and expectations in order to turn it all on its ear.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, because now all you need is someone else to come in and be even more extreme, right? To keep pushing the envelope around what's acceptable and what's not. And yeah, if you're cheering MAGA and Doge and you're cheering on what Trump is doing, you're not thinking to the, okay, well, when Trump is out of power and someone I don't like is in power, what happens then? It's either you're not thinking about it or you just haven't considered the possibility that this could be used on you. That
So how
agents,
do you improve that? How do you improve the short-sightedness of all the time? It's kind of like, okay, something might be good, but doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean long term it's going to work out. Like people were complaining about what the White House and the destruction of the ballroom and all of these things. It's like, even if a ballroom is a good idea, let's just say that it is.
sure.
Go about it properly. Go about certain protocols. Go about doing certain things the correct way. But then you're like, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I want. I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to take outside funding. I'm going to make it twice the size of the regular White House. It's just like, whoa. That's like, even if the ballroom is a good idea, doesn't mean that you just do whatever the fuck you want, because then you're like, oh, so, if it was a Democrat, like, okay, but if there ever is a time where they allow another real election and a Democrat comes in and he's just like, you know what? Fuck all you people. I'm going to put this up there. I'm going to put a big, giant gay lesbian flag at the very top, as big as the White House. Well, now you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, right now? What's to stop Trump from just knocking down the East Wing and instead of building this ballroom, just erecting a giant capital letter T on the side of the White
Nothing.
House? Right? And part of me wants to see him announce that, because I want to see just the backflips that right wing media goes through to justify why this is okay
Well, he
and why
probably
it's
will
cool.
put the big T on top of the ballroom because he's going to name it after. They're going to name it after him, so that will be the big T. And they'll say there's missiles in it to protect the White House or something, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea."
Yeah, we need a radar defense system on top of the White House, for sure, and it's definitely going to be in this giant letter T. Oh man, I can see it right now. Yeah,
Be gold.
I think Trump's great sin isn't that he's breaking these norms and abusing these levers of power, because all presidents do. Obama sent just countless drone strikes. We blew up school buses full of children. We shot cruise missiles at weddings. Right? George Bush sent people into black sites, sent to Guantanamo. There's so much that goes on. For me, though, it's all of them, but especially Trump right now, is that he's abusing all these things without any regard for the consequences, like we just said. And he's too old to have to live in the world that he's creating, right? He's never going to suffer any sort of meaningful consequence. But, he's opening that door for other groups to continue to to create abuses, and he's accelerating it in a way that just we haven't. I don't know when the last time we saw this was. Maybe post 9/11, right? We kind of had a bit of a shift in the Patriot Act and all that, but it's this rapid movement. I think ultimately,
Love to see him become like I just could only imagine like if he had like this true come to Jesus moment and was like, I'm just gonna turn everything on his head and do all these good things. I don't know if they would know what to do. I'd be like, the power he has. I mean, if he wanted to do good shit, there'd be no stopping him. Because the Democrats would be like, okay, and the Republicans are like, fuck, we got to go along with this. My God, it would probably have no more. It would probably reduce poverty in a year. But that's not going to happen.
well, see, that's the difference, right? Is they do perceive this as doing good shit. They, we have those 11, about 12 million people living illegally in this country that we talked about last week. And they see that as a moral imperative to deal with it, and that it's a good thing to be as brutal as possible in the crackdown on it. They see that they've been conditioned to believe that that's an existential threat to this country. And right, that's why we have a shutdown right now, because, well, let me take that back. That's not why we have a shutdown right now. That is a cover story for why we have a shutdown right now, is the extending of benefits to illegal immigrants and to people in this country illegally.
Dude, this is why Democrats are so incompetent, and why I always say that they mean well, but they don't know what they're doing. I would say, well, then let's come back and put together a healthcare bill that makes sure we eliminate any possibility of illegal aliens getting money. Period. Let's go.
Already in there. It's already in law that it cannot be, that money cannot be used.
I know it's law, but they should say that.
I think they're trying to. The problem is, there's a level of stupid. That's just a baseline level of stupid around these things. It's a lot of, again, it's belief. It's a lot of, I choose to believe that this is how it is, right? That, just think about the absurdity. Illegals are getting free healthcare. My brother in Christ, you live in America. Nobody gets healthcare. None of us do. So let's stop complaining that the illegals are getting healthcare and say, why the fuck am I not getting healthcare covered by the government, by all the taxes that I pay into it? That should really be.
Illegals are getting it all. All I know is if Mamdani is able to go on Fox to talk about shit, I think there's got to be some Democrats who could be like, all right, I got to fucking go on there and speak my mind.
That was a
who were like, oh shit.
Yeah, no, that was a big thing. I remember a couple of years ago. I think it was Obama. Where they were like, oh, we need to go on Fox and talk directly to these people. And people are like, how do you, and there was all this like pearl clutching about, you can't go in there. That's a den of the enemy, right? They're going to make you look bad, this and that. And it's like, no, you have to talk to people across the aisle. You have to talk to people where they're at and not hope that they come to you. You have to go to them.
Yeah, especially if you think you're smarter than them, which some of them really are. Then you go on there and they make them look stupid then if they ask you dumb shit. That's all.
Yeah, you have
Very
to get
simple.
You have to get the message to where people are ultimately, right? And I think you see this when you look at voting patterns, right? I think you brought up Mamdani. Americans are always voting for the outsider, right? This is why you had people who voted for Obama twice and then voted for Trump in 2016. These are the people who voted for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and voted Trump on the same ticket last election, right? She went on Instagram Live or whatever, and she's like, yo, talk to me. He's like, I don't get this. There are people who are saying they're going to vote Mamdani and also voted Trump last year. This is why Ralph Nader's campaign had legs in 2000. This is why Ross Perot got something like 15, 20% of the vote back in 1992.
I think people just are like, at this point, let me just, throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. Oh, look at that. It stuck. Let's go with that. And like hope something's to be better. But it's really like, I've said this before. It's like we keep going for the lesser of two evils. And I don't understand why those are our only two choices all the time. It's either go with this fucking crazy person who's definitely going to shake stuff up, or go with the normal person who's going to keep what's going that doesn't work. It's like, why are those the only two options?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's people I don't like who are going to shake up the system, or it's people who are going to keep doing the same shit that doesn't work and doesn't benefit everyday people over and over again. And that's the thing with Trump, right? It's Pandora's box. He's opening these things up, and what he's releasing can't be put back inside. And every successive administration is going to be free to do what Trump has done and more. But it's one thing to push the envelope within the limits of the constitutional order, and it's another to just kind of be chaotic and just doing whatever you feel like when you feel like because you feel it should be done at that point. Eventually, you're going to have someone with an even wonkier moral compass than Trump is going to be in power and with fewer regards for rights of citizens, and we're not going to like the results.
Yeah, the speed of which you are mobilizing ICE and funding ICE, why aren't you doing that for people's like health or anything else positive? It's like, people, what the fuck are you worried about? You haven't been this worried in the 30 years we've had all these illegal immigrants. Why the hell are you so worried now when your health care just keeps going up and up and up? You're getting poorer and poorer. Why is that not number one priority?
It's because the messaging is, look, pay no attention to the guys who are profiting off of all this. Pay attention to the guy below you, socially, economically, who's getting what you don't get. Or we're going to tell you they're getting what you don't get. Right. And you go, well, why don't I get that? Why don't I benefit from this? You know,
You would think you've read that story 1,000 times already, and you're like, wait a minute. I don't believe this shit anymore.
What's the big lie? It's repetition. It's just say it over and over and over until people believe it's true. That's why you were pointing out before, right? You've got Mike Johnson and all these Republican politicians going up there, be like, this is the Democrats shutdown. They're trying to give healthcare to illegals while you're starving, this and that. And they're just repeating it over and over and over. It's the same thing with the Antifa thing in Portland, right? Just keep repeating the lie over and over and over until it becomes true and people believe it.
At some point, you would think some people would be just like, protesting a little too much with this. Why do you keep saying this over and over again? Why do I think there's something up here? Because, you've been saying the same thing for years, and it's still an issue. Why haven't you done anything about it?
Well, I think it's starting to sink in a little bit, right? So as I said before, at this point, compared to Trump's first term, the number of protests have tripled, according to a couple of sources that have done this. We're also starting to see, based on the most recent No Kings protest, that protests are starting to happen in Trump country. It's not just counties that voted for Harris, not just counties that voted for Biden, right? And Democratic strongholds in cities. We're starting to see a lot of penetration in areas that voted strongly for Trump. I want to, Harvard's Ash Center had a little report about this recently, and I want to just quote one quick line. For instance, on No King's Day on June 14th, a protest in Kingsport, Tennessee, saw an estimated 2,000 people lining almost a mile stretch of Center Street, close to 10% of that city's population. Trump won the surrounding Sullivan County by 54 percentage points.
And this has a lot of money,
What was that?
Soros has a lot of money, so he just shelled it out to those middle class people that he knows so closely and dearly, that he gave money to rent buses and go in there and protest.
Yeah, maybe if you could throw a couple bucks our way to help produce this podcast, that would appreciate that. Maybe we'll say something nice about him.
You got to read the dark web. You got to know that he's the one who's funding all this stuff. God knows how, but he is.
Yeah, so I think we're starting to see people are disgruntled, people are unhappy. And I think more now, and again, what we were saying before is you had a lot of Trump flags, a lot of MAGA hats and all this shit. You don't have as much visibility of that these days, right? Especially this year. It's really fallen off hard since the election. It's been almost a year since the election. Like, there is a lot less visibility around that.
Saving their money for the 2028 stuff. I saw the 2028 merch. They're saving up for that.
There's a couple of new ones, but it's not like it was over the last 10 years. It's definitely lower. And again, we're seeing actual visible protests happen in just heavily Trump country at this point. I think the problem is, so people are unhappy, right? People are disgruntled. Life has gotten more expensive. Costs are not going down. Jobs are being replaced left, right, and center in a lot of ways. The economy is stagnating. If it wasn't for AI, we wouldn't have any sort of growth economically at the moment, right? All those investments that are going up. But at the same time, those investments in AI lead to investments in data centers, which are spiking electrical bills left, right, and center. And now people are being screwed even more out of their limited money. And so we're starting to see just the broader impact. Like Trump was an outsider, right? We love voting for outsiders. I think people are starting to come around a little bit more that he's an insider, or at the very least, he's an outsider who isn't able to accomplish anything other than the performative stuff like ICE raids and attacking illegal immigration and things of that nature.
And rewarding himself and his people just like him. And I hate to tell most of the people who voted for him, you're not like him.
He's not like us. Yeah, not like us.
No. You probably actually do believe in Jesus or God. He sure doesn't. He's a grifter. I'm guessing you're not, and you're a hard worker. So that's why, the cattle ranchers are getting fucked in the ass now, because he's like, well, there's a lot of beef inflation. They don't know what I'm doing for them. They don't know what I'm doing for them. So he's getting more and more beef from Argentina now. I'm like,
Yep.
well, this is what you should expect. That whole egg thing was just a blip. That was because of a fucking flu. That's why egg prices soared. My coffee costs me a whole lot more than eggs now. I don't eat eggs that often, but I drink coffee every day. And I think a lot of Americans do. And by far, you're paying more money now for all the coffee you drink than you ever did for eggs.
Yeah, I think that's why they're trying to strategically roll back some of the tariffs on the shit that people have pointed out since the beginning. You can't grow coffee in America and things like
Right.
that. You can't, certain things just don't exist in this country and you can't replace them easily.
Well, the Senate just was like, hey, we're fucking saying fuck you and your tariffs on Brazil. But so you got a bunch of Republicans on board with that. But it's just not enough to, get through the House and have Trump okay it. So whatever Brazilian coffee you're drinking, that's still going to be astronomically expensive.
Yeah, exactly. It's also to your point about the Argentina bailouts. There we go. Get the name of the country correct. Is you've got significant ownership of Argentinian debt by hedge funds who are partnered by people in this administration, and so you can't use the word bailout because a bailout is unpopular, especially for not mainstream banks, right? For hedge funds, but a decent chunk of this $40 billion now, right? It went from 20 to $40 billion that being sent to Argentina is just a stealth bailout for people in the administration who are heavily invested in Argentinian debt. And
So this is like it's an easy free trade because Argentina defaults all the time. They have not had a stable government or economy in my lifetime. And just hey, let's just put our money in there. We're going to get a really high rate of return. And if shit goes sour, well, we know the people inside to make sure that it doesn't.
yeah. So I think we have to maybe pivot a little bit here, right? Like what will work, right? So we're starting to see a significant increase in the scope of protests, just the sheer number of them. We're also starting to see them in places where you didn't see them before, right? Especially heavily in Trump country. They're still small, but it's not an insignificant shift there, right? Again, I think what we're seeing more broadly is people are still paying through the nose, right? You and I saw those placards ahead of the election, right? Kamala high prices, Trump low prices. That has not materialized at all in any way, shape, or form. How would it, right? Tariffs only raise prices. But so how does, and not just no kings, but any of these protest movements, all this increase in the number of people who are visibly complaining about one element or another of our government and the current administration, how does that start to shift? And how do we actually get to an outcome? And I think you and I touched on it earlier, right? Is okay, do they take this energy into the election? But again, so much of the last 10 years, messaging has been anti-Trump, 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 anti-MAGA. But what is it for? What are you standing for? And this is right. When we have two shit options, why are those our only options? Ultimately,
Right.
how do we?
I think Yeah, I think the protest needs to adjust to like a lot of things we were just talking about. Protest for fucking healthcare.
Mhm.
If this whole debacle right now in government is debacle, I always say debacle. I don't know why. Is about healthcare for immigrants, not immigrants, whoever. The story is it's too expensive. We don't get results like we the other countries do for the same amount of money.
Yep.
Let's do something about that. That protest that these guys are not changing shit. Get out there and be like, these are the rules. These are the things we want. 1, 2, 3. This is what we want. And, this is what we stand for. But it's got to have like a clear cut message. No kings is obvious. It's like this country is not about having one guy who makes the rules, period.
Yep.
Okay. We know that, or most of us know that. Okay. So what is the criteria for the person who's going to challenge that? Somebody who's going to make, it's not about ending ICE rate and all that. It's just like we keep repeating the same thing, going back to gay right. Let's focus on the things that people care about. The economy, what actually works for the economy, health insurance. Health insurance should be number one because it affects the economy. It affects every single thing that surrounds you. That is got to be number one, and a plan that doesn't just like, okay, we're going to have a plan, but we're going to make the hospitals and the health insurers really even richer.
Yep, exactly.
Because, since Obamacare, all their stock has done has gone through the roof.
Sure.
So that is what they need to change and work on, because these companies don't need to make billions of dollars. They just don't. And that money's coming out of your pocket. So these guys could get rich.
Yeah, they've got a brand or a messaging, right? No Kings reminds me very much of the We Are the 99% that Occupy Wall Street did, right? It was a clear message about who we are or what we're opposed to or kind of what we represent. But yeah, what is the goal? What are you trying to actually accomplish or achieve here? You've got to come up with that, right? And whether it's electoral reform, whether it's healthcare for all, whether it's some sort of meaningful economic change, right? Getting rid of tariffs, changing taxation, whatever it might be, there's got to be some sort of concrete outcome to actually get it to move in a specific direction, right? And then once you have that, then you can start to go, okay, how are we going to actually achieve that? Is it we're going to vote our way out of it? Are you going to put enough pressure on Republicans and Democrats to change their platform and to actually represent this? Or do you start to look at alternatives to working within the existing system and starting to, attack what's going on, right? And I think that's the key thing about Trump, is because he's so undermining all these norms and expectations that we've had around government. It's question is, can that survive? Can those structures and institutions survive Trump and what he's done? Because I don't think they can. Because again, anybody can come in afterwards and go, hey, we've done this before, we're going to do it again. And we're going to push the envelope just a little bit more, right? So if we actually want meaningful impact and change, I think we have to reform our institutions. I think we have to reform some of our founding documents and how we go about business here.
That's a definite, but it's not something that's going to be like voting, like I'm going out to vote for that.
Right.
I don't think the majority of Americans are going to do that. They're going to be like, wait a minute, the pills I need to survive, I'm going to be able to afford now. Okay, I like that. You mean if I get hurt tomorrow, I'm not going to lose my job? I like that. That's going to get you out to vote. But like, we need to put in the institutions to correct them so we can maybe make those things happen. I don't think that's going to fly. It's too like highbrow.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain that. It's just like, we definitely need somebody to put stricter guardrails in, but I don't think the guy's going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to make some changes, and I'm going to make sure somebody who comes in after me is not going to be able to bullshit things around.
Oh, that's the critical thing, is thinking about how this is going to look long term. So I think in the short term, there needs to be a clear goal and a clear outcome that is coming out of this, other than telling Donald Trump people think he's an asshole. or people telling Donald Trump they think he's an asshole. You need that clear single goal. And then from there, you've got to decide how that's going to happen, right? And I think I've looked at like a large number of protest movements and kind of these, peaceful revolutions over the last 30, 40 years or so. The ones that work have that broad coalition, which is what's starting to happen now. Again, you're getting inroads in Trump areas. It's not just city liberals and middle class people who are going after this. You got to get that clear single goal. And then you've got to have some level of sustained economic pressure to force either like our elected officials or big business to the table, right, to recognize these demands and get on board with the change. Or you need the security apparatus of the state to kind of come to your side. You need the police. You need the military. You need some sort of institutional backing from the security apparatus, because if cops are on your side, now suddenly you can't repress protests, especially as they start to demand more and more, right? You get the National Guard going, we're not shooting at people. And that's when that's when the current administration loses its legitimacy and starts to lose its power. It could be just what we talked about a few weeks ago, that kind of blue state, soft secession, non-compliance that's going on with what's happening with Trump and the kind of how they're trying to address some of these things. Is like, do you just get a plurality of the states backing the specific reforms that the protesters want, whatever the goal is that we decide that we want it to be, right? Whether it's healthcare or economic reform or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that probably work. I just think that the only, I want to say positive that Trump has shown is that somebody who's outside, like you were talking about, an outsider could really come in with say, we can do this, but we could do this in a positive way and in a good way because we've seen somebody come in and do it in a shit way. There's nothing stopping me from coming in there and giving you stuff that you want. Mm-hmm. And doing it like, okay, we can make this happen. I mean, before it was like, oh, we had to follow these rules and the Republicans are going to say no and then the Democrats will say yes and we don't have enough. Clearly that doesn't matter anymore. You just need a smidgen of all the houses and some Supreme Court guys, and then you're just like, I'm going to run roughshod. And if the Supreme Court says no, you can say fuck you too. Just like he doesn't give a shit. Yeah. So you could do whatever you want, and you'd be like, all right, I want these people to have health care. Well, you can't stop the health insurance. Yeah, we're just going to seize the health insurance companies. We're just going to make universal health care. We're just going to seize them. That's all. And then done. End of story.
You don't even have
stopping you.
You don't even have to do that, right? Like countries with socialized medicine still have private insurance. That absolutely does exist. They can coexist. It's just we've offloaded a profit motive and its administrative function to insurance companies that they really were never designed to do. And now we get poorer care and more expensive care because of these factors, right? I think, once you get the defection of the police or the military or congressional backing or a judicial contingent or, I think that kind of soft secession state backing by, let's call them blue states. If you get that, if it's used to kind of reinforce the existing power structures we have now and just kind of futz around with trying to do, we're cooked, we're done, right? It's not going to be, but if we can leverage that energy into a constitutional convention, into actual meaningful reforms around that address the issues with the exercise of power, the exercise of representation, as we talked about kind of in our initial episode, I think we'll have hope around being able to get some of these things, but we've got to have a clear message of what we're looking to accomplish here. And it's got to be simple, right? To your point, it cannot be highbrow. It can't be esoteric. It can't be kind of this thing that you need to really think about, right? It's got to resonate with everyday people. And I think that's their healthcare, right? That's their costs. Yeah. That's their everyday expenses. That's putting gas in the tank. That's gonna drive this.
And and the reason why I wouldn't want to focus on inflation or all those things is because it's the same drill baby drill nonsense. It's just something that fluctuates. I wouldn't want medical care does not fluctuate. It just goes up. There's no saying, hey, it's so much cheaper now. No. And the only time that ever happens is 20 years later when a generic comes out. Oh, now it's affordable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't fluctuate. Oil's like, oh, it's the cheapest now ever. Well, give it 6 months. Just give this 6 months. Oh, the stock markets are new highs. Just give it some time. So when it's at lows, you don't talk about it anymore. But healthcare always goes up and your care goes down. That doesn't seem to change. So you focus on that. It affects every single human being as long as you're alive. Because if you're dead, you don't give a shit anymore. And you run the fuck with that. And especially now that you have a government shutdown and the biggest reason is over health insurance. Run, Forrest, run. That's it.
Yeah.
Run. Be like, no illegals see, the thing is with that is technically I could like work it to say illegals do get healthcare because everyone gets healthcare. If you just go into a hospital, they can't really just throw you out and kill you. Mm-hmm. You get care and then you just don't pay it. Then we all end up having to pay for it. But like, why is that such a big deal? Work on fixing that aspect. But like, people are fucking people. They're human beings. Like, do you really want this guy to like maybe lose his arm because he broke it and I mean, come on. It's just like, they're going to the hospital because their kid is fucking really ill. You're like, oh, they don't have insurance. We can't cover them. Really? Is that really where you're going to like draw the line?
It's where it's that sense of fairness of someone's getting something you aren't. That
or the fact that there's repercussions more for you than them. And I get it.
Right, because
I totally get it.
You go into the hospital, you give them your information, and now suddenly, yeah, they can't turn you away from care, right? Legally, they cannot turn you away whether or not you can pay. But yeah, the idea is you're undocumented and you go in, you don't pay, you skip out on the bill. How are they going to send a bill collector after you, right? How are they going to garnish your wages? How are you going to get
exactly.
how are you going to have to declare bankruptcy? You're not. But if you're you and me and you go in and you're documented, then yeah, you can have hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of medical debt on your record and you go, should I just kill myself instead of paying this? I get that. I absolutely get that. The answer there is not to fight at the margins about the 3% of the population that is illegal in this country and may or may not consume medical care. It's about ensuring that we have care for everyone and everyone is covered and the costs are baked in for everyone, for the 97% of people who are in this country legally and the 3% who aren't. Just cover that, hey, if something happens, you're good to go. You lose your job, your family's still going to get their medication, right? You retire, you're still going to get coverage for whatever health issues you have. That's the messaging and that's the approach you need to do. You need to get away from this us versus them conversation around it and take the focus away from what someone's getting that you're not and just focus on giving it to everyone, right? Ensuring that it's a base level.
Yes, because we constantly focus on those margins. Like that is, listen, we cannot constantly be like, oh, this one guy, he fucked it up for everybody. We cannot keep making rules based on that. Mm-hmm. You know, there's going to be people who take advantage of shit. It's always been, maybe that's the oldest profession to go back around. People are fucking trying to grifting, taking advantage of someone else who's less capable. And that's always going to be around. You're not going to end that. Our president is the shining example of that. Let's focus on that other 97%.
Yeah, it's like means testing for handouts or benefits, right? Is like, why do we just give it to everyone who's a citizen? Just don't worry about it, right? It'll come back.
Yeah, because you know what? You always have waste. You always have, your restaurant business, you got to factor in the waste cost. It'd be great if you never had any, but you're going to have something. I mean, shit, when we go shopping, sometimes we forget something, food that we have in the house or whatever, and it goes bad. You're like, fuck, I can't believe I paid $1 or $2 for that. And now I got to throw it away. Or I paid $5 for that. I got to throw it away now. It sucks, but it's going to happen. And odds are it's always going to happen. And it's the same thing for this. People are going to take advantage of a system.
Yep.
But we can't fuck over every single other person who's not.
Right. It's taking away everyone's toys because of a bad actor, right?
Right.
Instead of just, again, it's where we're treating the symptoms instead of looking for a cure on all this. And this is
Yeah.
just what we do over and over again. Hey everyone, Rich here, just jumping in. Just want to clarify for this next bit. I was going off of memory. I didn't have the numbers in front of me, but I felt it's important. Of the SNAP participants in 2023, 40% roughly were children under the age of 18. Another 40% or so were working age, 18 to 59 adults, and about 20% were the elderly. Those numbers are pretty consistent year over year, with obviously small changes in the margin. And in households with children, about 50% had earned income. And that's a pretty similar number year over year. So just want to clarify that ahead of this next little bit. I felt it was important just to be clear about it. Thanks. We see this recently this week because we're about to run out of funding for SNAP benefits. So suddenly going into November, going to Thanksgiving, all 40 million some odd people are not going to be able to put food on the table because of the government shutdown, because of the cutting in funding. And you've got this concerted effort by right-wing media, and I'm sure more than a fair share of it is bot-driven, right? Is around who are these 40 million people? Stop being so fucking lazy, get your ass up and get to work, right? And go get a paycheck. And the reality is nearly half of those recipients are children who cannot work. They're children. And then the majority of everyone else.
Unless you live in Florida.
Yeah.
I think you could be like 10 or something now or something.
Florida's the exception to everything. And the majority of everyone else has a job, but those jobs pay so little that these people need the benefits, right? Ultimately, the problem is that the Walmarts and the Amazons of the world are not paying their employees enough to survive, and we are supplementing that overall. Again, the focus should not be on why are these 40 million people getting SNAP benefits. The point should always be, why should anyone working in this country have to be on SNAP and have to fight for this, right? Have to receive these. They should just be getting enough from their day job.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, the guy who's stocking shelves, do you think he's making enough to do all the things you think he should be doing with that money? You think he's really making enough? And if you do, how much do you think he's really making? Should he not get any help? What should he do then? Should he get another job? So should he just work 20 hours a day? Like, what are you expecting? It's one thing when people are like, oh, I work 2 jobs a night, but they're excelling at something to make all this money. I got that side hustle. They're making excess because there's money in it. But some people they work to the bone and have little to show for it. So what's the point?
What's this kind of attitude? And you see this with years ago, right? You had that fight for moving the minimum wage to 15. It's this like, I'll be damned if a burger flipper makes 15 while I'm making 14 doing this, whatever skilled job. And it's like, the problem isn't the quote unquote burger flipper is making 15. It's that you're not paid enough. Ultimately, right? It's that you yourself are getting screwed. And also, by the way, you want a hamburger, that person making that hamburger for you, they got to pay their bills. They got to pay their rent. They got to, they got to send their kids to school. They got to do everything you got to do. They got to buy groceries. Like, we're always turning it and attacking the people who are at the bottom instead of approaching it from the top.
I mean, because to me, like, the whole minimum wage idea is almost trivial at this point, because it's silly, because it's the businesses you need to focus on. Because great, they're going to give you now $20 an hour. If you think your burrito is going to cost the same next year as it does now, you're fucking out of your mind. And odds are that person is going to be, who works at the burrito place, is going to go to other places where they buy most of their food because they don't have time to go cooking or food. And their prices are going to go up so much that it's going to inflation will just eat all their newfound salary. Mm-hmm. You need to deal with corporate profits at the end of the day, because Bezos doesn't, Amazon doesn't pay, or Walmart doesn't pay its workers enough. The profits just don't, it's all for stock price. But if they had to pay everybody more or do better, their stock won't go up. And can't have that.
That's part of the problem, is ultimately is who is benefiting from this. Like, look, psychologically, we have this aversion to service workers in this country, right? We view waiters, people who work in grocery stores, people who work at gas stations, people who flip burgers. We view them as lesser in a lot of ways. These are people who don't deserve good things or they don't deserve good pay, but they do. They 100% do. I've worked in these places, right? These are good people and they deserve, you know, they deserve to have a decent standard of living. And it's this kind of attitude that we look down often on these sorts of people. And these are neighbors, right? These are friends, brothers, sisters, right? Family members. These are the people we live around. If you want these things, you want nice things, you want a society, everyone's got to be able to thrive together. And yeah, when you look at, oh, this would impact corporate profits, a significant larger, we got to stop funneling money to shareholders, right? To wealthy shareholders. And these companies have got to start working for the benefit of their people, not the other way around. The people who actually make shit happen. I look at Starbucks as a great example, right? You remember Starbucks 10, 15 years ago? You could walk in and just people from your neighborhood, from your town, would just be chilling in big, comfy lounge chairs, right? And hanging out for talking to each other. That they would be, maybe they'd be working on a laptop or whatnot. That was happening 10, 15 years ago. But it was a place you could be. It was a third space, right? You could come in and spend money, or you could just go hang out and be there. You go into a Starbucks now, there's no more big comfy couches, right? There's no more big armchairs at this point. Everything is geared around drive-through service for people going through. And the benches and chairs and tables that are there are not comfortable for long-term squatting in the location anymore. And it's an interesting microcosm for what's going on, right? Because they've struggled recently because they've moved away from all that. And so people feel less connected to the Starbucks location. They feel less connected to just going there and spending time and then spending money as a result of having spent time there. It's not a community area anymore. And so they're struggling because of that. And so now they brought in this guy who was running Taco Bell, right? He's kind of once again, they're kind of reimagining how they're doing the operations and doing the business. And meanwhile, the baristas, the people who work there are like, yo, why don't you talk to us? Why? We know what people want. We're the ones actually on the ground delivering, and you're fighting us tooth and nail every step of the way, right? They've got their unionization efforts and everything, and the company's fighting it. The simple fact is, at this point, Starbucks is a mature company. It's been around for 35 years at this point. They should go to an employee stock option program, employee stock ownership program, where these guys are bought in and that they're part of it. But we fight against that tooth and nail because State Street, Wall Street, right? Wealthy investors, they need their returns and they don't want to give up any of their voting control. They don't want to give up any share of the profits and whatnot. But the people who actually make it happen, who make it profitable, who make it a reason that you actually want to go there are the ones that we're shooting down because, well, they just make coffee. They're not worthy of my respect and that decent standard of living and all this. It's absurd.
No, it is. And I mean, those are the things that need to change. That's why I'm not a big fan like, oh, we got to, tax the rich more and you got to figure out ways to do this. I'm like, no, it's 'cause a lot of these guys are not really that wealthy. It's their share prices that wealthy. But if you make these people have to do things that are right for their employees, they won't be that wealthy anymore.
So, how it gets brought up often, right? But like the top marginal tax percentage during FDR was like something like 90%.
Yeah, it used to be so much until Reagan came along.
And then it was like 70%. And then Reagan started chopping that. You know what that meant was that if you were a wealthy person and you had a company or you had shares in a company and you knew that money was going to be taxed heavily at that upper range, right? Because you were above those thresholds, you typically did one of two or three things. You invested that money back into your company. That means new locations. That means improvements in machinery and operations. It meant research and development into new products. And most of all, it meant that money went back to the employees. It went back to management. It went back to the people who are actually making it happen because the alternative was to just cut a huge check to the IRS. And instead, they would make actual investments in the people and the business as a result. And we said, right, Reagan came along and said, that's a bad thing. And now all we've done is money continues to funnel to the top and the people at the bottom are just kind of eking along just slightly better than they were, but not in a meaningful way better. But there's a gap growing between those two. And I see so many, like I've seen it on Fox News, right? They're like, well, the economy's changed since then, right? The types of business change. We used to be manufacturing based, now we're services based. It's like, that doesn't fucking matter. Fundamentally, the money,
Bullshit.
if you are working in human resources, if you're working in customer support, if you're working in some sort of operations, within your business, you are a critical element to the success of that business, right? You are the reason that they are generating money. You should be a part of that. You should be a recipient in some sort of equal share to that on a regular basis because you're the one who made it happen. It wasn't the board of directors who made it happen. It wasn't a C-suite person who made it happen. It's you who made it happen. Those guys might point the head of the company towards where it should be going. If they make good decisions, it makes more money, but that's you actually make it happen. And it doesn't matter where you're talking about baristas at Starbucks, you're talking about workers at a grocery store, you're talking about guys behind the counter at McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or whatever, right? These are the people who are actually making it happen. It's us, it's you and me who are making it happen. And we need the system to work in that direction. I think bringing it back to our point about the protests, you find that common thread, right? That this is what we're looking to accomplish. You can start to turn these things from a once every couple of weekends sort of protest into an actual movement demanding meaningful change that's going to improve the lives and livelihoods of ourselves.
You just got to find a way to, like, in essence, simplify common sense. Like, these are the things of why things don't work anymore. These are the things that we need to do to change them. Let's just focus on that. Stop being so narrow-minded about people. They just fall into the trap of, he can't have what I don't. I have to have more than this person. I can't, this person does nothing and they get paid more than me. But that anger doesn't get you anywhere. And it's not going to change anything, unfortunately. But these are the changes. I mean, those are obvious changes. It's common sense. But gosh forbid you should hear it. That's why, like, oh, we'll tax the rich, 2%. I'm like, that's a bad idea. Because yes, it's going to, you look at the, the Zuckerbergs and yeah, great for them. So they'll sell a few shares and they'll pay whatever. But what about that guy who's on the cusp, who has like is worth $50 million, but most of it's his business? Is he going to now have to sell it to like vulture capitalists to make the money to pay you guys till he falls below that? It's just dumb. Changing the way we run business and making them put money back into business, like those shareholder buybacks. You're telling me Apple, for the hundreds of billions of dollars in share buybacks, they couldn't come up with more shit or new shit with that kind of money? Come on.
Yeah, no, they're sitting on huge chunks of capital and they just spend it on themselves. And they continue to spend it on themselves, and it doesn't go to employees. It doesn't go to, doesn't even go to, well, it goes to shareholders, right? To the buyback, but it doesn't go to anything productive. It doesn't go into R&D. It doesn't go into capital expenditure. It doesn't go into improving anything. And I think that there's an element of that because there's only so many Apple products you can sell, right? And here's the fun part. If you start to charge less, then you start to create deflation and the prices of things start to come down. That technically on a mass enough scale is a bad thing, right? Because fundamentally the line can only go up. That's the only way that the math works from a balance sheet perspective, from a capitalism perspective, right? The number has to go up. It always has to go up. So it cannot ever go down. So it's this ratchet effect. It's the same way you see like an empty commercial real estate space. It's not that there aren't businesses willing to go into that spot. It's that because of the mortgages, the commercial mortgages, they have a minimum that they have to charge. They can't go below it, even if the market rate is lower. And that's,
but then they'll stay vacant for like a year or two.
Because they can't do it legally because the way the mortgages are structured, they can't charge less. Or otherwise they're in violation of the covenants of their mortgage, and then they're going to lose the building. So it's actually to their benefit to leave these spaces empty and unused until they can finally find an anchor tenant. This is why so often there's so much gentrification around what stores are where, right? And why everything kind of looks the same these days. It didn't used to be the same brands, and it used to be a lot more independent shops on every main street and every shopping center. But now the only people who can afford that are large corporations who can put that, who can afford to pay that rent, even if it's not profitable to pay that rent. They could just have an anchor location in that particular area.
It'd be crazy to own a store and be like, man, I'm losing money, a ton of money every month, but I can't charge this much, and so I will lose less money every month. Because eventually you'll probably just default on the property anyway if you don't get a tenant at some point, unless you have really, really deep pockets.
No, because the asset itself, the building, appreciates in value. And so eventually you show an appreciating asset, even though you're not generating the rental income, your balance sheet looks good. And then you sell it when you want to, and now you've pocketed the money.
So fucking retarded. So stupid.
A little hard R from you there, Adam. I love it.
I can't help it. It's just, we live in such a fucking cockamamie world that like we could totally fix so much shit if we just were like, yeah, this is broken. This is how it really should be. Let's just make it easy on ourselves and do it instead of really making it ass backwards.
It is. I think we touched on this, right? Until we start to change the incentives for why we do things, it's going to continue to be this way. Ultimately, we're just going to kind of run around in circles. And why I look at No Kings and 5051 and the Hands Off and all these other protests that are going on right now. Again, they are just a show of visibility against what's happening, but they don't stand for anything. And until they start to stand for meaningful change in how we're in the incentives in our society, I think we're just going to keep chasing our tails on this. We've got to find a way to kind of break through that. I'm hoping that can happen here. I'm hopeful that we'll coalesce around a message of positive change over the course of the next year. Because again, I think if this just leans into vote even harder, vote bluer, or whatever bullshit, right? Nothing's going to fundamentally change. We're just going to kind of go back and forth. It's going to be a seesaw. It's going to be a pendulum going back and forth. We've got to kind of get at the heart of this. And this is an opportunity to do it, right? Again, I think Donald Trump specifically in this administration, Stephen Miller and all these guys are working so hard to undermine the norms and values of what has underpinned our governance and our country. And we have to recognize that, and we have to take advantage of it to move it in a positive direction for all of us, for the bulk of us. Not just those.
Somebody's going to have to take that message, and be a part of those protests and lead one of these protests and be like, we just don't hate you. We don't this, but these are the things we want to bring forward going forward.
Adam,
somebody has to do that.
Adam, I volunteer you as tribute.
I'm the sacrifice.
Don't worry, buddy. I got your back.
way back. I got my first vote. Well, I don't know, but somebody's going to have to do that. And I don't know if any of these clowns are going to do that because, 90% of it is focused on hate Trump more, not changing anything. So great. So you hate Trump. Say you win. Say you got rid of Trump. Now what? Where are we now?
That's Biden. That's Biden's win in 2020, right? We had COVID. Everyone was miserable. Trump was not showing any leadership and didn't really accomplish anything. And boom, done. He's out, right? But then we got Biden, who didn't do anything to benefit anyone.
But that just seemed like so much more normal than Trump's normal. It wasn't like some
It's the normal
every
we're
day.
used to. It's a normal that we're accustomed to. That's why, because Biden came in and it felt like the adults were back in the room because it was comforting. It was familiar to us, but it doesn't actually mean it was good by any objective means.
Yeah. No, it just was not bad. That's what it is. It's like now it's like be less bad. That's what we wanted. Be less bad. Okay, we got to be less bad. So now how can we be more good? And it's like, no, no, no. We're going to go back to let's be more bad. That's
More,
basically what we've done.
more batterer.
Yeah. Be be more horrible. That's basically what we just did. So you have to have a plan to go forward after that. What is the plan?
It's yeah, it's not enough to tell Trump he's a dick. It's what are we going to do about it?
And I think what also hurt Biden was that COVID was still like, we were in the throes of that. And so that had to be like the focus of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that kind of took its place, it was like, okay, we got like crazy inflation. What are we going to do about it? Let's give the American people more money to spend. But I think that you have to be like, okay, we don't like Trump. We want to get rid of him is because these are the things we're going to implement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do something about illegal immigration in a humane way. We're not going to just forcibly round up people, throw them into places, and then make them disappear. We're going to go about it in a much more strategic and better way and not ship them off to different countries and halfway around the world and say, good luck. We'll do things in a different, more classy. We're going to be classy way. That's what we're going to do.
You have to remember, right? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's, when you think about immigration, for instance, right? Remember last year, there was a bipartisan bill to deal with immigration enforcement, right? And around expelling and removing migrants from ports of entry, stricter asylum standards and everything, and more detention capacity, all the shit that Donald Trump is doing right now. And we had bipartisan support for it under Biden. And then he came in and told the Republicans, torpedo the bill because I want to do this and I want all the credit for it.
Yep.
And that was the fundamental.
Less classy.
Yeah. And I mean, it was a less classy version, but that was, I think ultimately Kamala Harris's fatal flaw was she came in and she was just a continuation of the status quo under Biden, which was not something people were voting for, right? People were voting against Trump in 2020. And now suddenly their lives aren't meaningfully better in certain ways financially, that they're worse off. And again, it's vote for the outsider, bring him in. But is that the outsider doesn't have actually any new ideas. He's just taking credit for new and different ideas.
Yeah. The outsider's already inside.
Those are coming from inside the house.
You just don't know it yet. And that's where things fell. But I think that's where this protest movement has to move to. Somebody has to kind of come to the forefront of it. Especially for I'm assuming the next one will be, I guess they'll do another summer, but I would hold off on that if they can and wait till right after elections or something like that and see what happens. Because I have a feeling there's going to need to be a massive protest after these elections come up. Because he's trying to every single way he could figure out ways to make sure Republicans win. Either giving them more seat opportunities, getting rid of people who can vote. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure more red tickets go into the box than blue tickets. And I think when it gets sketchy, somebody's going to have to do protest, and it's going to have to be bigger than big.
Speaking of sketchy, what happens. Speaking of sketchy, when do you think this shutdown ends? What do you think triggers it?
Jesus. I mean, I really think that I think they got to do something before Thanksgiving. I think they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to figure out a way to be like, I mean, the Democrats have to just come up with a clear plan and saying, these are the things, this is what's really happening. This is what we should vote on, and now do it. And if they still won't do it, the Republicans, then you might have just protests breaking out automatically as a revolution starts. But you got to get that message. You got to get that clear example of we could just end this tomorrow. Just don't let people not have health care. That's it. Period.
I think because now's open enrollment time, right? That's that time of year. I think between the increases to premiums and coverage because of the dropping of the ACA subsidies that are happening and the loss of SNAP benefits that are going to run out in 3 days. Right, we're recording October 29th. They run out on the 1st. I think that's going to be the push. It's not going to be Democratic messaging. Democratic messaging is absolutely fucking trash. They've always have been and they always will be. But it's going to be people getting hurt, right? Ultimately. And part of me looks at it, I see what
the cave then. Who's going to cave then? That means the Democrats will cave.
No, I think it's the Democratic Party's approach is, to an extent, is let them start to see the higher prices, right? And try to point out this is because the government isn't functioning and the Republicans are in charge of the government. So let us in. There's also, we haven't talked about this. There's that rep from New Mexico, I think, Gravelita or something.
So hasn't gotten sworn in yet?
Right. And she, I think there's been a lot of hay made about she's the deciding vote on releasing the Epstein files. And given that Johnson, adjourned Congress early in the summer to avoid a vote on this, I think there's obviously an ulterior motive to all this. And this is the messaging they're going around, right? Is the illegal immigration, because that's what sticks. But eventually people are going to start to get hurt. Right, they're going to be not able to put food on the table. And look, society's 3 missed meals away from revolution. I think once that money starts to run out, that's tens of millions of people who have got nothing to lose, who are going to starve heading into Thanksgiving, and it's going to put people already at the breaking point financially. That's going to be the push. Whether that means, I think I could just see Trump coming out and shouting to find a solution, right, to reopen the government and trying to take credit for fixing it, right, once that starts happening, once people start going hungry. Because that's just what he's going to try and do. I don't understand the whole
Epstein file thing at this point anymore, because how bad, in essence, could it be that you'd be willing to continue to cover this up? And at this point, you've protested it so much that even if you do release it, nobody's going to fucking believe it anymore. So, what has been accomplished at all during this whole thing? What is going on, really?
There's over 1,000, according to the FBI, over 1,000 confirmed victims, trafficking victims from Jeffrey Epstein. Some almost 200 have actually come forward, had their claims verified by the estates, by the group that's managing Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and they've gotten compensation, right? The dates, the people they met with, right? All that stuff have been validated privately under the table, right? And they've gotten compensation for it. What we don't...
a bunch have come public and said, hey, I'm a victim.
Yeah.
I want some restitution. I don't want restitution. I want some clarity. I want shit to come out.
See, this is what the Epstein files is at this point. You're never going to get the names of the victims unless they come forward, like the ones that did during that press conference. Right. The problem is that we have something like a half dozen names of confirmed people who were there on the island at times that we knew that shit was going on. Their names are public. You can look them up. But that half dozen or so super wealthy businessmen who are on that list, they're not being prosecuted, right? There's no prosecution for them. Also, they didn't themselves abuse over 1,000 underage girls who were trafficked by Epstein, right? So there is this iceberg, like this under the water chunk of names of wealthy, influential business people and political donors and people behind the scenes who support Democratic politicians and they support Republican politicians that they don't want to expose, because that, to our point about actual meaningful systematic change, that is going to trigger it, because that is going to be unacceptable. The fact that these people are not being prosecuted. Now, I can understand that they don't not be prosecuted because there is only circumstantial evidence of their crimes and what happened. And we don't prosecute people based on a whim. We prosecute people based on actual evidence. But the fact that we're keeping their name secret and not dragging them through the mud is absurd at this point. right? It's who are we covering up in the levers of power?
So you think that it's just basic, which is makes sense because these people are fucking stupid, like ignorance of like, I mean, but Trump, if he's in, I mean, you have Bondi and Patel, you have these guys who like have like talked about her for so long leading up to it. Now you're in power, and it's just like, yeah, it's nothing. I'm
Yeah.
like, is that what it was? It was like maybe it was like a way of like saying we are, we who we are. We are going to get to the bottom of this. We got to the bottom of this, and it's nothing. Okay, that was just like, is it because it was so anticlimactic, or is like, wow, did they get to you too at this point? Like, it's just very, very odd that the whole thing would have pretty much just dissipated if it wasn't for them calling it out constantly. So I'm not really sure what it's like. Okay, we're going to bribe certain politicians, but we're not going to bribe them not to be chosen to come into the office. I don't really understand like their hand in this.
They saw it as the Trump administration saw it as a winning talking point, right?
But why if Trump is involved?
Because they had no intention. I read a report recently. I forget where it was, but basically it was behind the scenes in the White House. Apparently, when this kind of blew up at the beginning of the summer, Trump was like, I don't get it. Why are they so into this? Why is everyone demanding this? And it's like, well, dude, you and your people and all of your vast right wing, social media, right? Laura Loomer and all these people, they've been pushing this. They've been pushing this hard as a thing you're going to do. And now that you're reneging on it in the last second, he's like, I don't get it. Why does anyone care? But he also had that moment where he was on with CBS News or 60 Minutes or whoever. And he's like, and they're like, oh, would you release the files? He's like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, well, I don't know. There might be people in there who might get hurt, right? He suddenly had this moment of clarity of who actually, butters his biscuits. And
Yeah.
he realized he can't put out the names. So when I hate this disingenuous shit from people who support Trump or conservatives who are like, well, the Democrats could release the files. It's like, no, none of them can release the files because their backers, the financial people, the people who abuse these women, these girls on this island, they're bipartisan. They donate to both parties. They support both causes. They're just in it for the power. They're not ideologues. They're in it for money and power. So it's this, I don't even know, prisoner's dilemma, right? It's this mutually assured destruction where neither side can credibly give out the names because they shoot themselves in the foot at the same time.
So you think the Democrats are all agreeing to like release it, knowing that the Republicans are not going to go along with it? It's kind of like, I'm going to say this because I know you're going to fucking go with the opposite because you do the opposite of everything we do.
The big push in the House is co-chaired by Roka Hanna and Thomas Massey. That's a Democrat and a Republican, right?
Exactly.
It's become bipartisan to an extent that we just need the truth out there. We need clarity, right? Who is it? Justice Blackmun said sunshine is the best disinfectant. Like, this all needs to be out in the light. And honestly, I don't really give a shit if these super wealthy people, their names get dragged through the fucking mud. Let them defend themselves, right? Let them fucking deal with that, because ultimately we deserve to know who was there and who was doing what with whom, possibly when, even if it's something that there isn't enough evidence to tie them to specific activity. It's enough that they were there, and we should know that these people are influencing our government and our politicians.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, it's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling, like how much time is spent on these things and not anything of any value or importance.
Right. And that's the thing. Ultimately, this is one of those, technically, this doesn't matter. It only matters insofar as we are
The
trying to
victims who have been affected and the people who did the crimes.
Right. Exactly. It is a minor issue, technically speaking, but the fact is it speaks to the greater need for systemic change in our country and the way that power and influence is bought and sold, and representation, right, of the people's interests. This speaks directly to that, because these are the people who are fucking around for all that. So
I
that's the
know.
only reason, honestly, that's the only reason that it truly matters, other than just generally getting justice for the victims.
Yeah, I just don't think a lot of people even think of it that way. They don't really. They're just like they just want somebody to burn,
That's
preferably
what it is.
Democrats. I think.
Yeah, that's what it is. Everyone wants someone to burn. They want the quote unquote other team, other side to burn, and they see this
They
as
just
an
want George
opportunity.
Soros on that list.
That's the beauty of the Epstein list, man. I've had the flight logs for years.
Can't
I've
anybody
had that
come
little
up with
black book.
anything? Can't you just put any name you want on there at this point?
No, I mean, it's been out there for years. We know who's on it. We know who was on those planes. We know who was hanging out at these parties. We've got the video, right, of who Jeffrey Epstein hung out with and whom he had connections with. That's
Okay, so
not
what's the quiet part then that's not being said?
the quiet part that's not being said is who victimized, who were the Johns that,
Right, but I'm just saying at this point, can't they just create their own list? Who's gonna be able to check them?
because libel and slander laws exist and you can't just throw people's names out
They're
there.
mostly if they're all dead.
They're not all dead.
Most
There's
of them
they're alive and they're backing the Republicans. They're backing the Democrats, right? And they're not going to bite the hand that feeds.
You just put all the Democrats on the list. You keep them all on the list. You throw one or two. You go, hey, listen, you're going to have to face the consequences. Put one or two Republicans on the thing, and then be like, hey, see, it's all Democrats. We told you they were terrorists. They were all evil. Here it is. 80% of them are all Democrats.
At this point, no one believes that. No one would believe it for a second.
Exactly. Nobody's going to believe it anyway.
That's why it's mutually assured destruction. Everyone's going to go down for it, or at least significantly enough of everyone that it's problematic. That's the kind of thing that brings down governments, Adam, right? Is when it's not just attacking one side or the other. It blows up everything fundamentally from the bottom up as to how our system works and how it's funded.
Feeling it'll be just like, all right, let's focus on that shit while they just fleece the government and all that other shit from behind while we're focusing on the rich guy. They're not going to take it to its logical conclusion that these are the people who are funding those politicians.
That's what it is at this point. And yeah, again, if we want meaningful change, releasing these files is a way to attack the funding mechanisms of the current political parties and that are in control of the state, in control of the country. That's what this is a means to accomplish. All right. So I think if you're talking about these protest movements need to coalesce around a single simple message that's going to resonate with people, if they're going to expand, right, and actually try to accomplish anything, the other side of that is attacking the people who are your opposition, right? Who are going to do everything they can
that from happening.
Prevent that from happening. Exactly. And if you can get that out there, you can cripple that from the start to an extent, at least if not actually with criminal liability, right? At least drag their names through the mud and you start to associate them with your opposition. Now you delegitimize it.
Yeah. And it has to be somebody who could give a shit about either of those parties and either of the money of those two parties.
Yeah. It's honestly,
you give money to them, you give money to them. I don't give a fuck. I don't want any of your money. Kind of like Bernie Sanders, who's like, I'll give me $1.
I'm once again asking you to release the Epstein files.
But that's what it is like the Epstein files has now, become like this crazy ass meme that's taken off. But it really boils down to, we want the people who really influence the levers of power. Because at this point, this has gotten like almost a weird sense of comical thing about something that's actually serious to a lot of people who've been hurt. Mm-hmm. So you have to be like, all right, what are we covering up? We're probably covering up a bunch of people who influence Democrats and Republicans. They're both going to be guilty. There's no doubt about that. They're both equally have freaking nasty kinks that they like. And that will help point us in the direction of not only the changes, but like almost like a beacon of like, this is why these things don't work. The Citizens United, this is what this does, is like it allows them to funnel money to prevent themselves from being prosecuted. Because you, my friend, if you did these things, you would be in jail for a very long time.
Yeah.
and you have no chance of getting out unless you have a lot of money that you could give to Trump and he'll pardon you.
It speaks to the two-tier level of justice that we see in this country. Again, people in power are often not held accountable. And even if you're not a person in power, but you have wealth, you can buy your way out of trouble in a lot of ways. And fundamentally, that goes against, as Americans, we have a sense of fairness, a sense of equality, right, around these things. And when we see that being violated over and over again, it sticks to us fundamentally. We see it as wrong. So yeah, so I think that when you boil down the Epstein files, right, that's, and people you love and people you hate are both on the flame logs, right? They're both known to have attended these parties and gone to the townhouse in Manhattan and everything. It's this equal opportunity thing that cuts across society, and it's not left or right. It's not Democratic or Republican. It's power and wealth against everyday people who would be dead to rights if they did the same shit.
It's an interesting, like, it's the Epstein, what was just said before, like it's like a meme, but it does, like, it draws attention because it's so like salacious and sexy and like dirty and wrong. And like where health insurance doesn't, but they all have the same rooted problems of influence that affects your everyday life. Epstein is about people getting justice. Rich people and influential people do not have to really worry about that much. Same with healthcare. Like, you guys are going to just have less insurance because somebody else needs to make a lot more money, either the companies that make the drugs or the products. It's always the same. It's always that backroom dealings. And the Epstein files just kind of like tightens it up into such a small, nuanced thing where it's like, this is a lot easier because we got a list. Nobody's like, we know that the drug company is like exploiting us, but like we've known that for a long time, and we haven't really addressed that, and we're not doing anything about that, no matter how much we say we're going to. Here it's just like, matter of fact, this guy was there. What the fuck was he doing there?
Yeah, why was he, And then they're going to go, well, I got invited. Or I had a friend who was going and I wanted to see what it was about. And, I didn't see anything while I was there. Right? It's that kind of thing. Again, this is why it's so difficult to prosecute.
But the victims know who they did, right?
Presumably, if they bothered to follow up. I mean, can you tell one old, pasty, wealthy white man apart from another? Come on, Adam. We're white people. We know we all look the same.
I think not only would I maybe be able to, but I think those people would be such braggarts that they would have said a ton of shit to me that would really make it easy for me to figure out who it was. Like, my business is worth billions of dollars, and, I make this, I do this. Oh, we did this the other day. We did this. It's like, I think you'd probably remember that shit by the guy who just fucking assaulted you.
Look, I think teenage girls are very capable of taking you down emotionally and cutting to the core. But again, these are teenage girls. You're giving them a lot more credit for street smarts and worldliness around what you could do with this information than 99% of people are going to be able to do.
I'm thinking like the guy who's like, well, the guy who raped me kept talking about glass. So let's look up pictures of guys who run glass companies. That kind of thing.
I mean, look, that's why the victims who've come forward, who've come out publicly, right? They know their name's going to get dragged through the mud. They know that they're going to be a target because of this. And they have been. I mean, Virginia Jeffrey, right? She killed herself last year, right? Over some of this stuff. So there's a lot going on here, man. And it's, the first thing, like, I think when you Google, let's just actually do it right now, right? When you Google her name, I think net worth is one of the first things that comes up. Virginia Jeffrey.
Killed herself?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe so book, death, cause of death, autopsy, children, documentary, memoir, and net worth are in the top 10. I don't think I've polluted my Google algorithm too much. But yeah, net worth is up there, right? People like, how much did she profit from telling this story, from throwing these people under the bus? But yeah, she killed herself last year. Well, possibly in the same way that Epstein killed himself, but Yeah, no, she committed
You
suicide
made it
last
this
year.
far. Why are you killing yourself? Jesus. But I think she had like
That,
a lot of mental health issues, obviously.
that was my first
But
thought when I heard about it. Was yeah, why? But I think yeah, she was traumatized. Like she spoke out, but she did not. She was not doing well.
oh, you know what? It's like, you write a book, you're gonna make a living. You're gonna make money if it's popular. But I
Sure.
mean, she's not gonna be as rich as the people who did what they did. So, and it's just the whole world is so disgusting most of the time, and we're trying to figure out like you know things that could improve it when it just seems constantly that nobody wants to improve it. It's like we kind of really like this as long as it goes back and forth between what the status quo is. We just like being abused. It just seems like it comes down to that. Like, we could probably make changes, but that seems like a lot of work. I'd rather be punished.
Yeah, no, this goes to the point you made. Like the Epstein controversy, whatever you want to call it, is kind of easily digestible for most people and is understandable. And demanding healthcare or more equitable, you know, access to money and wealth, right, from what you produce at your company and how society works is complicated. It's not easy. And so, to the point we were making earlier around where these protest movements need to go, if we want to see some actual meaningful change, they need to coalesce around a message. And it's a simple message that resonates with people because this shit's complicated and it's easier to kind of just get distracted by salacious stuff like this than it is to actually try and fix the problems we have. Because in the end, we got mortgages to pay, we got car bills, right? We got to pay for oil, gas, we got to pay the water bill, we got to put food on the table. And that's all becoming harder and harder and harder every day. And it's easy to just take your rage out on something or use something salacious like this as an outlet instead of actually addressing a problem.
The solution, in this case, would be something easy. You get the people's names, and that's it for you. And then the courts take over and they do that shit. But when it comes to the health industry and all that stuff, okay, this is what we're going to do, but it's going to be a long, arduous process before you see the fruits of that labor. Whereas a list, you could get that immediately. It's that fast dopamine hit. It's not the long term that the other things are going to take. I want lower prices now. Well, cows don't get grown overnight. It's like the chicken thing. It's like, well, eventually we're going to grow more chickens, but that doesn't happen in a week. It's going to take some time. And I think we're so into this now. Now we need it. And maybe like those protesters knowing that, hey, it's not changing anything tomorrow, because sure as hell didn't, that it's a long process that we got to get behind and get bigger and bigger until the change actually takes effect. And that change is something we have to have in place that we're going to execute on. And those people need to know this is what we're executing on. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but you'll start seeing changes. Slowly but surely, you're going to see changes, and they're going to be positive, and you're going to be like, holy fuck, this is actually working. That you need.
Yeah, we need that first step, and we need momentum, right? And
Yes.
it's cliche, but be the change. And so I think seeing that others want change as well and are willing to put themselves out there and also aren't associated with MAGA, right, is important for people to get back to where we started this almost 2 hours ago at this point. It's important to see
Yes.
that you're not alone. And what is this accomplishing ultimately? It's the first step. It's the first step of a long, long journey, but it's a necessary one, right? And they all start with humble origins. And eventually, I think we're going to get somewhere, right? I think we're going to get to a positive outcome. It might take some dark turns on the way there, but we'll come out of this stronger. I believe it.
Praise be.
Praise be. All right. Once again, hail Antifa. And yes, no. Thank you so much. This has been good. I think we definitely took a little bit of a detour there at the end, but I think it's a good conversation overall to have about just the state of the world right now.
Travels back. I think it all travels back to itself is like, what are we protesting? And we're protesting a guy who makes decisions, and somehow those are the rules. We don't need an Epstein list. You don't get an Epstein list. We don't want you to have this. You don't get this. We want this. We get this. Those are not the rules of a democracy.
Yeah.
And a free democracy with a real justice system.
Thanks, everyone. Be good. Be safe. We'll see you next week.
Peace. Idiots Seeking Village is a production of Village Idiots Media. For more, find us online at villageidiotmedia.com or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and wherever you get podcasts.